Okay, welcome back to CNET Live. I'm Brian Cooley. In case you haven't noticed, it's Soundbite presidential election season here in the U.S. And Tom is joining us now with the co-founder of a very cool site that'll help you get your thinking together on this, Glassbooth.org, one of several sites helping voters figure out who they want in November.
Thanks, Brian. That's right. For a long time, people have thought the web would be an excellent resource to kind of really find out what's going on with the presidential campaign, get the information you need. And there's been, the last several elections, these quizzes online you can take that's sort of like what Hobbit are you quiz, but instead it tells you what presidential candidate that you might want to vote for. But they always kind of lacked something. They always felt a little off. This year's best effort that I've seen is Glassbooth.org, and we have the founder, Ivan. Thanks for joining us. Or a co-founder, I should say.
Thank you.
Don't want to leave your other folks out of it. So Glassbooth.org is trying to improve on this idea of answering issues questions and matching you up with the ideal candidate. How are you guys doing it differently?
So I think at the core of the process is a huge wealth of resources that we put into the actual topics and researching the candidates where they stand. So at the core of it is a wealth of information. The way we distinguish ourselves is that we focus on the educational process throughout the quiz.
So it's not just answering questions, you're actually learning about
exactly.
The
So
issues
you know,
as well.
and it's also, you know, it's not a simple case of I agree with abortion, I disagree with abortion. We'll have multiple questions on, you know, various topics.
Oh yeah, like civil liberties, crime and punishment.
So exactly.
Iraq.
So you start off by choosing which issues are important to you. You allocate points to them. Once you reach 20 points, you go to the next step. And on that page, we give you a list of questions based on the issues you chose. From there,
so even the questions are customized. You're not going to get the same questions if you have different interests. Well,
exactly.
Smart.
And you know, they really try to drill down to the issue at hand. The questions themselves sometimes can be difficult, but we provide links within the question to help you actually learn more about the topic that you're answering.
Which that's interesting because it actually helps you form an opinion instead of saying, well, I don't really know. I guess I'm against it. I don't know.
Exactly. So once you go through the process, you know, I think the final payoff is really where a lot of the value is created. You're able to toggle between all the issues and all the candidates very easily, and you can see visually where you answered and where we think the candidate would have answered in the same question, in addition to providing rationale as to why do we think the candidate stands on this issue in this way.
Well, I've had fun with that actually, where I've not only gone through and said, okay, here's what I believe, but also gone through and tried to figure out, okay, if I'm that similar on that, what happens if I change my opinion on that? Who do I get then?
Right.
Which can be a fun little game as well to kind of see like, oh, I'm sort of wavering on that. I answered this way, but if I don't feel as strongly, do I get a different person? And then of course you can go through and just like totally lie and like say like extreme left or extreme right answers and see who comes up that way. But I like that it gives me that sort of temperature reading, so to speak. And you don't just give one answer too, you give percentages on all the different candidates so that you can kind of say, well, okay, this is your top guy, but he's not even that far from, say, Duncan Hunter or Mike Huckabee or Barack Obama, even if they're not number one.
Exactly. I think one thing that we wanted to avoid was providing prescriptive advice on who to vote for. And, you know, by surfacing everything, you know, one of our kind of main ethos is transparency. We're not trying to tell you, okay, take this quiz, your number one guy is, you know, Dennis Kucinich, that is who you should vote for. We encourage you to see why they're the number one, and maybe as you're looking at the results, you realize, well, actually, this is, you know, this issue right here really put Dennis Kucinich as my number one. Maybe that's not my number one issue. And you can actually go through it and actually look at the rationale and look at what they said. You can watch videos of them actually saying it and seeing their legislative record as well to further, you know, solidify your impression of the candidate.
Now, obviously, there are tons of resources out there. Do you guys have some favorites that you use as well in researching for the site? Some things you could recommend people to kind of supplement?
Sure. So one of our initial partners when we first started was On the Issues, and they actually created the core of the information we have.
Is that ontheissues.com?
It's ontheissues.org.
.org, okay.
And of course, we also work with Rock the Vote, which provides a very handy widget for people to easily register and be eligible to vote. I think that's, you know, one of the main things you can be doing after taking the quiz is actually registering and acting upon what you've learned.
Actually getting into the process so you can actually vote instead of just, you know, researching online.
Exactly.
You can actually turn it into action. One that I know we were talking about before we came in here on the show is Polititweets takes the feeds from Twitter
Right.
and actually searches them for candidate names and then puts them in a Republican side and a Democratic side, so you can see what people are saying, kind of take the temperature of different folks' opinions on the different candidates as the race goes. It was great for when I was watching the debate.
Right.
But you got any other last resources you want to?
Sure. I mean, one
What's your favorite?
One I've been pretty impressed with, and just being a designer, I'm more partial to look at the presentation and see how they're approaching it. Is Political Base is actually a pretty solid property.
Is that a wiki? Wiki Foundation based?
You know, actually, I'm not sure. I'm not actually. It's not. I believe it's actually was started by one of the founders of CNET, as a matter of fact.
I know Shelby Bonney is involved.
Right.
I couldn't remember if he was in with the wikis or if it's just wiki-like.
You know, frankly, it's just lots of resources, and it's I think very well presented. That's one I've been eyeing. There's another one which I
find a lot of good money stuff there. Yeah.
Exactly. I think that's an interesting one, and I think one thing actually that we try to kind of steer away from is the coverage of politics like a horse race. You know, I think a lot of times you'll see the New York Times political section, and it's, you know, this candidate just, you know, is 2 points ahead, you know, in this state, and you know that in some degree we'll believe trivializes, you know, what's at stake. You know, we want people to make more informed decisions at the voting booth.
Yeah, they're covering in a lot of cases who do you think is going to win instead of covering who do you think you should vote for? And
Exactly.
I think that's where sites like Glassbooth come in and help out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming by. The site is glassbooth.org. Go check it out, play around with it. I think you'll enjoy it if you like politics in the least, which this year you got to like it at least a little bit, right, Brian?